Hello everyone, this is Kevin Robinson from Dealer Fire and welcome to our monthly Intro to Engine 6 webinar training. During this session, we're going to spend about 30 to 40 minutes talking specifically about the basics of Engine 6, where to find it in Ignite, how to use some of the basic functionality like modules and page creation. And after that, we'll make sure to leave a little bit of QA at the end of the session to make sure that you get any of your questions answered. We're going to wait just about 20 seconds here for people to finish logging in. I know there are some morning meetings, so we want to make sure everybody gets a chance to get the webinar up. And in the meantime, just to go over some logistics of GoToWebinar, if you've not used it before, first and foremost, and probably the most important feature, is the questions panel. Just to the right of your panel, you'll notice a small section called questions. In that, you can type any question that you have related to the session, and we'll make sure to try and answer it during the session itself. We'll also leave a little bit of time at the very end. So anything related to the content of the session, unfortunately today we won't be able to answer any site-specific questions, but we can certainly follow up with you afterwards. I'm going to include a Engine 6 specific email address. You can also reach out to your dedicated CSM or website account manager. And if you have any of those website-specific questions, we'll make sure to get those answered for you. In terms of the deck and the session itself, it will be recorded, and we will send out a recording of that about 24 hours after the actual session takes place. So those are the logistics. As I had mentioned, 30 to 40 minutes is runtime for this particular Intro to Engine 6 session. I'll go through the agenda here in just a second, and then we'll actually dive deep into the tool itself. So let's go ahead and get started. First and foremost, I had introduced myself before, but my name is Kevin Robinson. I am the product manager over websites and digital marketing for Dealer Fire. I'll be leading our session today. One thing to mention about our sessions is we do conduct them monthly. So if you're looking to relive this session, if you're looking to do more of a deep dive session, we do 2 a month. One is typically our Intro to Engine 6, and then our second one varies per month, but it's usually more of a deep dive session. We've done things like lead form builder, working with SEO, working with global styles in the past. And if you have any recommendations for sessions that you'd like to see moving forward, go ahead and drop those into the questions module. And we'll make sure to get those added to the lineup. But this ultimately, in terms of feedback, comes directly from you. A lot of these sessions have been changed, tailored, and edited to match your specific wants and needs. So feel free to keep sending that feedback in, whether it's through the questions panel during the session itself or directly to the product team after the session. So during today's training, we're going to cover 3 specific topics or 3 categories, and we'll talk a little bit about individual features and components as we go through each of these. But when we talk getting started with Engine 6, there's really 3 main buckets that we'll talk about. The first one is going to be just generally navigating the platform, where to find specific features, how to get started. The second is going to be building a page. So as you are creating a page within the system, how do you start from scratch? How do you start with a template, etc.? And then lastly, once you have a page developed or built, what does multi-device preview mode actually mean? Or how can you preview your page across multiple devices, not just on desktop or mobile? And then within that, how can you make device-specific changes as well? And as I had mentioned, we will do just a brief, maybe 5 to 10 minute Q&A, depending on how much time that we have remaining as well. So we'll come back to this deck here in just a little bit. That'll have that Engine 6 specific email address that you can email the product team through. But for the time being, let's go ahead and actually jump into the tool itself. Now, for the purposes of this training webinar, I'm actually going to use one of our Toyota themes. We just call it Next Toyota. For your dealership, this might be different. You might have a different franchise. You might be a different independent dealer. But the thing to keep in mind here is that the basics, the foundation, the architecture of the tool all remains the same, regardless of if you're a franchise or a independent market dealer. So just something to keep in mind there. Now, in order to access Engine 6, it's actually a very similar structure or process or flow to how you manage content in Ignite currently. It's just a different system, a different tool that we're accessing. So this page is probably relatively familiar to you. This is just your system dashboard. This is the first thing that you see when you actually log into Ignite. And what you're going to do is on the left-hand side, once your website is activated or enabled for Engine 6, you'll see a brand new option here at the very bottom called Engine 6. In this case, you'll just want to click on that and you'll be taken to the Engine 6 interface, which looks just like this, and actually very similar to the homepage that we just saw from Next Toyota. And that's the whole beauty behind Engine 6 is you're doing inline visual true WYSIWYG style editing. Now, the one thing that I'll mention here that you need to watch out for is if you are managing multiple websites under the same dealer group, you'll want to make sure that you navigate to that specific website. So as you can see here, my company is ENGINE6 OEM Themes, and I'm currently editing my dealer socket Toyota, which is this next Toyota theme. So just something to keep in mind there is as you're editing your different websites, you can toggle back and forth. Just make sure that you're saving any changes in between that. And one thing you'll notice is as we go through this demo, it's very similar in terms of functionality to tools like Squarespace, Duda, Wix, where as I mentioned before, it's true inline editing, but there are some configuration options that are very unique to us. There are some styling options that are very unique to automotive. Basically, in our case, when we onboard you as the dealer, we start with a base template, which is just the base architecture of the website, and we customize from there. It just makes a very easy onboarding and build process to get you to market as fast as you possibly can. So first of all, let's talk a little bit about navigating the platform itself. And to do this, I'm just going to make the screen just a little bit bigger so that we can actually see the different options that are currently available to us. So first and foremost, the left-hand panel you'll notice is actually collapsed. This is basically just so you have a little bit more room to actually do your in-page editing. But along the top, this is where your primary navigation is going to lie. In terms of building a page and editing your content, this is where everything starts. First and foremost, we have our menu manager. I'll get back to that here in just a second. We have our page creation tool under Add a Page. We have our module gallery. We have system modules. We have design, which is essentially global styles. We have devices, which is going to be your multi-device preview mode. And then we have some SEO settings like page settings and site settings. We also have a market segment dashboard, which is going to be for things like personalization and geofencing. I'm not going to be able to cover all of these during today's intro session, but what I am going to drill down on is things like your menu manager, page creation, whether it's from scratch or templates, as well as your module gallery, and then your device preview mode. If you're looking for more information about how to edit things like global styles, your fonts, your colors, etc., we do have a separate deep dive session for that, actually one that was recorded previously, so you can definitely check that out. Same thing goes for things like editing your website SEO, meta titles, meta descriptions, schema, SEO URLs, you name it. So that's really where we start out with. And the one thing to notice is as I hover over all of these different elements that have these dotted lines on the home page, and this is the same for interior pages, you'll notice that the name of the module or the component will actually pop up like spacer or paragraph or animated headline, as well as these three options on the right-hand side. We have clone, so this will actually just copy a module. We have our wheel icon or our gear icon, which is going to be for module configuration. And then we just have the trash can, which we all know that's for deleting. If you want to hide these module and configuration guidelines, all you have to do is click on this hamburger menu in the top right and say hide module outlines. This allows you to just work in space a little bit more clearly. If you want to see those, just go ahead and pop that back in. This just makes it for a lot easier management as well as editing within the page itself. And as I scroll down, you'll see that we have a lot of different modules here, some that are automotive and inventory specific, some that are container specific, which we'll talk about in a little bit here. Also things like maps integration, footers, headers. It can get pretty robust, but the main thing to keep in mind is when we're building your website, again, we start out with a base theme that's going to have every component that you want added, and then you just have the ability to work with your builder and or do it yourself in order to customize from there. So before I get into the actual module configurations, which we'll talk about a little bit when we start building a page, let's first talk about the menu manager, because this is a really slick tool that allows you to really change your main navigation as well as any page settings in one place from the homepage itself of ENGINE6. So as I use the drop-down menu here, you can see that we're currently on the homepage. All of the pages that are listed under primary pages, this is what's going to be part of your main navigation. So as you can see here, we have home, new, pre-owned, specials, finance, which is the exact mirrored options that we have here on the primary menu navigation. Anything that's under unlinked pages, these are pages that are currently in progress, maybe something that you're building, maybe it's a system page like a BDP or an SRP, that's just a global page that you can't necessarily edit one for one. All of those are going to be under unlinked. I would definitely recommend that if you're putting together something for a promo or something for an event that's upcoming, You can definitely build it out and then just drop it into your unlinked pages. We also include a nifty little eye icon here. And essentially what that is if you click it and it hides the eye, that page is no longer going to be on your sitemap. So it won't be crawled, it won't be indexed. So that's a nifty little tool that we added in case you're putting any sort of model content out there that isn't yet released, but it's a good tool for you to use. So I'm just going to pop that back in there. From the menu manager, you also have the ability to add a page. We'll talk about that in just a second. You have the ability to add a link, whether it be internal or external. A good example of this is a lot of OEMs, as they are putting out new model content and new information for the month, will actually require your website to have a recall link or some sort of owner site link. So what's cool about that is I can just click on link here. I can say I want this to be an external link, and maybe I just send this to toyotarecall.com, whatever that URL might be, and it'll actually just open up in a brand new tab or a new window, whatever you select. The last option is a new folder, and you can see that at play here with our specials finance service, where if I click this caret, it'll actually open up the submenu. So under specials, for instance, on top here, I'm going to have used car specials, special offers, weekly ads, and service specials. So you can drag and drop as needed. And again, that's kind of that unique functionality about menu managers. Rearranging is very easy. For instance, if I want my finance tab or folder that contains these three options to be listed before specials, all I need to do is drag and drop it into place. The same goes for, let's say that I want this training page to actually be dropped into my About Us folder. I'm just going to drag that underneath, and automatically it's going to be under About Us. So very easy system to navigate, very easy to rearrange your menu as you go. You can delete pages using the trash can, and you can actually use the gear icon here to access your SEO settings, like your meta title, your meta tags, or your meta description, your SEO URL, etc. Now, at any time during this process that you've added a page, removed a page, made a quick update, I would recommend going up to the top right here, because then you can click on Save. Save will save all of your internal changes for your specific profile. Publish, on the other hand, will actually make those changes live for the consumer. Now, an important note of distinction here, if you're getting Engine 6 access before your website goes live, you don't have to worry about Publish actually sending your website out into the World Wide Web. It's still going to be hosted on a dev domain. In order to make this website live for consumers, we actually have to do a DNS update with our servers. So Publish, all that means is that you're going to update the website for the link that it's currently on. So if you're on dealername.dev.dealerfire.com, publishing this content will just make those changes that you updated live for that URL and not for whatever live domain you're currently working on. So just as an FYI there. If at any time you make a change and you just want to cancel it out, all you have to do is refresh. We do have page versioning coming here probably within the next few months, so you can do undo, redo, kind of as you see fit. So that is your menu manager, essentially the ability for you to rearrange primary navigation, create pages, hide your pages from the sitemap, all of those fun things. So next, let's talk about actually adding a page. Now, what's cool about this is we have about 70 or so baked-in templates that allow you to just essentially swap out images, contents, assets on a given page. Those are all going to be housed under the All category. You can see here I have quite a few Toyota pages. But what's nice about Engine 6 as well is if you build a page from scratch and you actually really like it, maybe it's getting you really great conversion, you can actually save that page as a template for yourself. So for instance, under my templates, I might have something here that's like my ultra optimization page. So I could use that in every case, just swap out the images and content on it. If you want to use a pre-built template, all you have to do is select that template. So we'll just use, let's use this Toyota parts template, for instance. And as I go to next, this allows me to name my page and drop in a page URL. When I do that, it'll spin up this page with the exact assets that were on it when I created the template, and all I have to do is kind of mix and match, swap out any of those links or images that I want to create the new content with. But if I want to create a page from scratch, and I go to add page, what I can do is either choose a blank page or a blank pop-up. A pop-up would come into play if I wanted to build some sort of form maybe that launched off of a call to action button, or maybe some sort of form that I want to launch on the homepage. So that would be a responsive overlay. You can put a form, you can put a module, you can put inventory on it. For today's purposes and the limited time that we have, we're going to focus on just a completely from scratch blank page. So let's go ahead and do next. We'll call this Dealer Fire Training. And as you can see, my page URL is dynamically updated. We can change that here in just a second. And as I create the page, this is going to spin up in an environment, or essentially a blank slate, that's only going to have my global header and my global footer. So here you can see the header is in play. We have the footer. We also have some breadcrumbs that are just global on every page as well. But in the middle here, we have a completely blank slate that we're starting from. And this is really where Engine 6 kicks in, where we can do a lot of our editing, where we can do a lot of our page building, and just general digital management. So from here, we probably want to start out specifically with modules. Now, if you click into the module gallery, there's a lot of different categories that you can choose from. You can look at all the modules. You can look at the most popular modules that are being used in the system: contact, forms, inventory, media, search, specials. Each one of these categories contains at least 10 different modules that you can just drag and drop onto the page. So for our purposes right now, we're just going to start out with a very plain paragraph module. This would be something that you're going to drop onto the page for things like SEO content. Now, to get to this, either I can drop into something like a media category, or I can just search for it. So we're going to search for paragraph. Here it is. And in this case, all we need to do is drag and drop this onto the page where we want to go. Now, similar to a Squarespace, Engine 6 is very intuitive in that it's going to tell me exactly where I can drop this module. So as I bring it onto the page, you can see that little green line pop up. That's referred to as a guideline. And in this case, all I can do is drop it into one spot, right? Because we don't have grids on the page yet. We don't have any other assets or modules on the page. So we're just going to drop our heading into place, or our paragraph into place. And this is just going to be a plain old WYSIWYG text editor. I have the ability to set my alignments, to set my text size, to set my headings, etc. But this will really be the base or the jump off points of our page itself. So let's keep it left aligned, and we're actually going to select a heading 1 or an H1 tag in this case. And we'll just say something like Dealer Fire Training for Engine 6. Pretty straightforward, but what I can do in this case is I can actually edit this particular text in a number of ways. I can change the color of it. Maybe I want it to be purple. I can change the size of it. Maybe I want it to be really big, 72. I can make it bold. I can make it italicized. I can make it underlined. A lot of different options that you can do here. In later sessions, when we start talking a little bit more about page creation when it comes to SEO, you'll actually want to be able to assign your H1, H2, H3 all the way down to H6, and then actually change those global settings within your design tab. Not enough time for that today. We do have an extended session going over that a little bit later, but for the time being, we're just going to leave this here, Dealer Fire Training for Engine 6. Now, the next thing I want to do is probably add an image or some sort of combination of images. So when I go back into modules, maybe I want to search for something like an image block. You can see here that we have just a standard image, so I can drag and drop that onto the page. This will automatically open up our image uploader. So if I want something that's going to be dropped in under the page, like this Toyota 86 image, for instance, I can insert that as a file. I can set an image description. We'll say Toyota 86 in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. This will be your alt image tag and your alt image title. Maybe I'll just do a center alignment for that. And just like that, we have a H1 and we have an image on the page. Now maybe I want some sort of call to action buttons. So I'm just going to search for what I have for buttons. I can either do a single button or I can do multiple buttons. So let's do that same thing here. Now, the one thing about this, let me search for that again, is now that we have two assets on the page, you can see that we have a couple different options as far as where we actually want to drag and drop these. So as I hover over the different grids on the page, I can drop these action buttons a number of different places. Maybe I want them to be directly underneath my H1, or maybe I want to drag and drop them directly underneath my image, for instance. So I have a couple different options there as far as where I actually want to drag and drop these buttons. In this case, I'm actually just going to drag and drop them right underneath my H1. I'm going to center these, and this is where that configuration panel comes into play so nicely. This is where you can set all of the asset criteria for your individual page. Now you'll see that by default, the action buttons just say button, button, right? So I want to be able to switch these out. So maybe this is something like schedule test drive. And as I go through the different configurations here, I can do everything from, add a an icon from Glyphicon to select the URL that I actually want this to link with. And as I scroll down the drop down here, these are all the pages that I currently have on the website. So there's no more anchor text linking from within a paragraph or within an image or a button. Everything is directly integrated to this drop down. So if I wanted to search for schedule service, for instance, I can just drag and drop it there, and I can set primary and secondary styles. Maybe I want this one to pop a little bit more, so I'll just set it as a secondary button. Same thing goes for the next button. Maybe I want this to be schedule service. And maybe I want this to be, let's see what for an icon here, maybe like a car door. And then I'm going to search for my schedule service page. There it is. And I'll just leave this as a primary button for now. So just like that, we have our H1 and we have two buttons that are set up to link to our test drive page as well as our schedule service page, respectively. Now maybe I just want to add a form to this page, maybe like a general contact, for instance. So I'm going to go to my form gallery under the contact or under the form category here. And then I'm just going to drag and drop this general contact us form. We'll just put it right underneath the image. Now, I'm not going to go too robust into form settings during this session, but just so you know, we have a lot of different options when it comes to form. Everything from creating required fields to changing help text to doing multi-step form builders. It's really robust. If you're looking for just a general form, though, this is a great base template to start out with, because if I double click into the form, I have the ability to just add fields from our field library, even check boxes, multiple choice, type of vehicle, a lot of different options here, or I can just double click into a field itself. And this is where as I was talking before, you can make a field required or not required. Phone number is a good example of this. Some dealerships love to have that phone number required. Some like it to be optional to get more conversion. Really just depends. You can also edit specific sections within your form. So if I double click into my call text email section, I can change the configurations related to that. I could even change my title. So ask a question, maybe just ask me, exclamation point. So a lot of different options that you have here. Last thing I'll mention about forms is if you go into the form settings, this is where you can actually set up your individual routing. So if I want this to go to my CRM, if I wanted to go to an individual, like a plain text email, the thing to keep in mind here is when we're building your site to start out with, these will all be set up by default. You don't have to worry about setting the configurations. But if you're building an individual page, it is a good thing to keep in mind that adding a form to the page, you'll want to set up a routing address, whether it be your CRM or an individual or both, right out of the gate. And that's just so that you can make sure that that form goes to somebody right away. And then the last thing in the tab for info is that once I create this form or add it to a page, it's actually going to tell me every single individual page on the website where this form currently exists. And that's great because no longer do we have this user-coded tech debt lineup of forms across the website where we kind of need to search and destroy what pages a form has been added to. Now they just are neatly listed out within their own individual info tab here. So let's just go ahead and apply and exit. Now when I do that, the system's automatically going to ask me, do I want to update my existing Contact Us template that I just edited, or do I want to save this as a brand new template? In this case, we'll just update our existing, so we'll apply that. So now we have our H1, we have our call to action buttons, we have an image, we have just a general contact form. Let's maybe just use some of these in-page editing capabilities to add something like SEO text. So I'll hover over the paragraph module here and hit the clone button. And as you can tell in this case, I actually have the ability to just duplicate a module. So a good example or use case of this is in the case of creating a page from scratch, I don't have to keep going back up into the module gallery and dragging and dropping it on page. I can simply enough just clone the module itself, and it just creates a lot more efficiency for me. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop in some text here, some SEO text from a different website. And there we go. We have our H1, we have our paragraph module, we have our multiple buttons, we have an image, and then we have a form. So pretty much the basics of getting a page. Now, there is a lot more individual configuration that you can do for the page itself. You can add things like video, you can add backgrounds, and I'll go through that here in just a second. Because this is a pretty straightforward page right now, right? In terms of SEO, it's pretty much where it needs to be, but in terms of styling, there's probably a lot more that you'd like to do with it. So before we get to that, let's first talk about multi-device preview mode. So if I go up to my main navigation here and just click on devices, you'll see that we have 4 different categories of devices that we can actually use. We have desktop, which is what we're editing in right now. We have small monitor, that would be everything from a MacBook to even an iPad Pro. We have tablet, that would be like a general or just normal iPad, anything that's about 760 pixels wide. And then we have mobile, which is going to be all your handheld devices. So as I toggle throughout all of these devices, the actual editing system is going to change to show me exactly what my page will look like across those devices. So first, let's go to small monitor. So as you can see here, we have pretty much our same layout. Not really much has changed. It still looks pretty good in terms of white space. There's probably no editing that's needed here. I also have the ability to toggle back and forth the most popular small monitor devices like a Surface Pro and an iPad Pro. I can also rotate the screen between portrait and landscape mode. So this gives me the ability to see exactly what my customers would see. Once I drill down into tablet mode, this is usually where it gets a little bit more tricky because you want to make sure that this is displaying properly for consumers that are accessing from multiple devices, especially throughout the day. For tablet, really not a whole lot of changes here either. Everything looks pretty good. Spacing, padding, everything is up to par. We can toggle a few times between the different devices. Everything looks pretty good there as well. And then let's go down to mobile. So even mobile, in this case on an iPhone 5S, this actually looks pretty good as well. Maybe we want a little bit more padding here as well in terms of some of the mobile layout, which we can certainly do. And to do that, we're going to work with something called a container. I'm going to show you exactly how container works on the desktop breakpoint, but just to give you a little bit of a crash course on how to edit between devices, if I'm on the mobile breakpoint here, first and foremost, I have the ability to kind of drag and drop my modules to accommodate some of that extra spacing. I can also click into what's called a container that's going to be outside of your individual modules. So here you go. The container actually encompasses both paragraph modules that I have within the page itself. If I click on the wheel or the gear icon within the container, this is going to open up a few different configuration options. First and foremost, if I want to drop in like a really cool video background, I can do that using just a URL link from my YouTube video here. So that would be kind of a cool video with some text overlaid on the top of it. If I want to edit the padding of these modules in my container, once you click into the Styles tab up in the top, you have a couple different options here. And one thing to keep an eye out for is anytime you see this little lock icon with the screens, this means that you are editing device-specific style. So any changes that I make to this configuration that has this icon when I'm on the mobile breakpoint, those are only going to apply to mobile devices. So for instance, maybe I want to add a little bit of padding to the top, maybe like 10 pixels or so. And you can see as I update that in real time, it'll actually bounce it down from the top, my H1. I can do the same thing on the bottom, the right and left. This really comes into play, especially when you're using things like images and video containers, because it allows you to just create much better spacing within the handheld device itself. I'm going to go ahead and close that. So that update that I made with 10 pixels, if I bounce this back out to my desktop view and open that exact same container, you can see that the padding is still 0. So that device-specific change was only made for handheld devices. It was not made for the desktop in this case. And now to kind of close up the page, talking a little bit more about containers and how handy they are. First and foremost, if I click on the gear icon, I can actually make this container full width. So I can kind of get it to blast out of the containers, especially if you're working with responsive websites. So under my width setting here in the container, I can say, let's go ahead and fit that to browser. So that's going to expand my container, but my content is still going to be column-based. So with that, I can actually just go to my content width and say fit to browser. Now everything is full width on the entire website. And as you can tell, even my text is kind of right up against the line. And that's going to be the case for not only small laptop, but also any of your tablets. And this is really where that padding setting comes into play. So maybe I want to bounce some padding on the left and the right, maybe like 20 pixels or so. So as I make those updates, just slide it along the line here. You can see that it bounces from the left and the right to create just a little bit more space for me. The other thing I can do is actually set backgrounds in terms of containers. So for that, Let me take this container and I'll just show you how that works. Let's go ahead and make this full width as well. Fit to browser and fit to browser. So my form is full width in this case, and that looks kind of weird. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to fit to content for that. But what I can do in this case, let me jump back down, is when you click on the background drop down, this allows you to add an image. You can add parallax images in the back of this as well. So you can really change the structure, style, and design of your page pretty quickly here. In this case, all I'm going to do is change the color of the background. We just have an integration with hex values here. So right now it's at hashtag 0000, which is just your white background. If I wanted this to be changed to something that's within my color guideline, I can simply enough just select a color from the palette on the left-hand side, or I can create my own color just using the palette on the right-hand side. So maybe I want something just like a gray background, or maybe a little bit darker. There we go, maybe a little bit lighter. And then I also have the ability to change the transparency of that just by using this slider. So container backgrounds can be changed pretty easily using colors, using images, using videos, and it really allows you to create some specific branding to your dealership. And as I mentioned before, if your dealership has marketing specific guidelines, this hex value is great because you can just drop in whatever color is specific to your marketing guidelines and it'll automatically adapt it. Not too deep into colors, fonts, or styles today, but just to give you the ability to kind of create and play with container styles. Really, really nice, and really creates a lot of different ways that you can actually set up pages within your system. And same thing here, once we have this set up, always a good idea to preview it through your devices just to make sure everything looks good across the entire spectrum for all of your consumers. Last thing that I'll mention in terms of pages is when you do have that page set up, maybe this one is great, it's getting me a lot of conversion. If I go to the hamburger menu on the top right side here, this is where we can actually save this page as a template. So if I click on Save as Template, this is going to bring up my template creation. I can name my template, and I can actually say, I only want this template to be visible for me, or I want it to be visible for everybody in my company. You don't need to worry about the other two because those are just because I am an admin, but it allows you to also update a 350 by 460 preview of what that template looks like. So it's just really easier for you to pick out of the template library as well. You can create as many templates as you want. You can share them with as many people as you want. There is no restriction there. Let's say that you're creating a bunch of pages on the fly, maybe model pages or release type pages. You also have the ability to duplicate. So once I get this page really locked in and in a place that I want it to be, I can just click on duplicate page, and this will automatically spin up the exact same page just with a 2 in the URL afterwards, and then you can just set up your SEO URL to be something completely different. But it's a really efficient system if you're looking to build out content quickly. This is the exact same system that our content marketing team actually uses as well. So it's a really good system to be flexible, provide you a ton of control, and really create a good digital brand for your dealership. And then, as I mentioned before, as you go through the process, just make sure that you're saving internally. And then whenever you're ready to actually preview that on the live website, you can actually click on the publish button as well. So that's pretty much it in terms of the intro to Engine 6. Just as a quick recap, make sure that you're going to Engine 6 website within Ignite. It's the exact same system. I would definitely recommend that as you're first using the system, just create a page from scratch. You don't have to edit your homepage, your VDP, or your SRP as you go through the process. Just create a brand new page, hide it from your sitemap, and just play around with it, because that really gives you the ability to see exactly what modules are currently in the system. It gives you the ability to use multi-device preview mode and really check out containers. And within an hour or two of actually using this tool, I guarantee that you'll be pretty much an expert, because as you've noticed, there's not code for miles here. I did not use any CSS. I did not use any JS. I have not put any sort of code into these pages whatsoever. This is all line for line visual WYSIWYG style editing, similar to a Squarespace. And we built that out so that you could be as efficient as possible within your dealership and your website to really get that content into the market and your go-to-market strategy as fast as possible. Anytime that you want to edit things like your SRP and VDP, the last thing I'll mention about that is they are global pages. So if for some reason you can't find them, they'll typically be housed under the system pages. Not going to go into those today because that's more of an inventory type conversation, and those will be set up for you during the build process. But it does allow you to edit things like your filters, your sorting options, how many images you show, your call to action buttons. A lot of different varieties and configurations that you can actually set yourself. So that being said, let's go ahead and jump back into the deck. I do believe we have about 5 minutes left just to go through some questions, do a little bit of a QA. So let's just talk about some of the things that we had gone through. And let me just read through the questions here and see if there's anything that sticks out specifically. Let's see. So here's one, actually kind of a 2-point question that I think that we should address. First and foremost, do you integrate with Vimeo? The answer to that right now is no. Currently, our only video integration to actually pull content through is YouTube through an API. If you have just the raw video file, maybe it's a .mov or a .mp4 file, those can be uploaded no problem. But if you actually have just a link, we prefer you to use YouTube. I think most dealerships these days are on YouTube. We are exploring a potential integration with Vimeo a little bit further down the line. I know they have some expanded capabilities, especially with analytics. But for the time being, it's just YouTube. And then the other question was, how do I actually add the video to the page? So let me go ahead and jump back here to the page itself. So there's 2 different ways that you can go about this. First and foremost is you can just find the video module. So here we have video embed. So if I wanted to, maybe I just wanted to add this below my H1, drag and drop it onto the page. It's going to ask me for the video URL. Maybe we'll just grab one here by random. But this allows me to essentially create a video library. So I'm just going to grab like a ENGINE6 version here, and we'll drop this into the page. We can set different settings, like do I want to set autoplay? Do I want to show related videos? All these different things that actually come through the YouTube API. So this is the first one, and if I wanted to, maybe create a little lineup of videos, I could simply enough just copy it and then just drag and drop it into play here so that the videos aren't too big. Do the same thing, clone another one. Clone another one. Just move this one up to the top. There we go. So we have a couple different options here, a couple different configurations that we can create and add video content just through YouTube. The other thing that we can do, and I'll just delete these, is we can add a video container. So this would be something for, let's say for instance, we wanted to put a video behind our form for whatever reason. So we just click on the gear icon and just paste in our video background. And this will automatically import the video to actually display on the background itself. Now, obviously this isn't a great video. You probably wouldn't want this because it actually has a lot of different screens that it goes through. But if you just have like a general cinematograph or something like that, maybe a drone video of your dealership, this would be great to actually drop within a container. So 2 different ways that you can add videos. One is just using the YouTube module. The other is using the YouTube integration within your container styles as well. Okay, let's see if there's any other questions. Let's do this one just to kind of cap it off. This is a good foray into our next deep dive session, which is more of an SEO conversation. But this is, how do we edit the meta title and description of a page? So there's 2 ways that you can do this. First and foremost, I'm going to get out of here and just go to this training page. I'm going to delete this page and reload. So editing the meta title and description for a page, there's 2 ways that you can do this. The first is you can navigate to the actual page itself, like the home page. And on the very top navigation, if you click on page settings, this will allow me to edit my meta tags. So as you can see here, we just have some meta elements that are in place. These are for theme purposes, so that your name and website name, and dealership name, and makes and cities are all pulled in by default. So I can change the page heading, the meta title, and meta description directly from page settings, or if I want to do a little bit more efficiently, within the menu manager, if I click on the gear icon for any one of these pages, like let's just say, for instance, the specials page, this is going to bring up pretty much the exact same settings. So that's a folder, but if I wanted to go to used car specials, for instance, I wanted to go to weekly ads. That's a good one. Again, meta tags on the left-hand side here, heading, title, description. If you want to add an SEO URL, you can as well. But that's usually the most efficient and easiest way to get about this, is just going into the menu manager, selecting the gear icon or the settings icon from whatever page you want to edit, and just go from there. That is all the time that we have for questions today. I did see that there were a few others that came in, so we'll make sure to reach out directly to answer those for you. But the last thing that I want to say is I had mentioned this at the very top of the session. We do have an Engine 6 specific email address that I would love for you to email us if you have any questions about the product or any enhancement requests. If you would like us to concentrate on any specific topics for the next training session, definitely do it. It's e6@dealersocket.com. That actually comes directly to the product team. We're very responsive. Typically for most questions that you have or items that you have, those can definitely go through your CSM or your website account manager. But if you're just generally interested in the product process or any updates that we have coming up, do not hesitate to use that email address. So I just want to close this out and say thank you everybody for joining today's Intro to Engine 6 website session. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop those into the questions module. We'll get those answered for you a little bit later. The recording webinar deck will come out to you within the next 24 hours via email. But thanks again, everybody, for jumping on. Really appreciate your cooperation, your help through the training sessions. We've gotten a lot of really great feedback about this, and we can't wait to get to the next one. Thanks, everybody, and have a great day.